on GiveOnLIVE. It is our DeFi and kind of update Tuesday. We're so excited for everyone that is joining us. Christiana, it's been a while since you've let me host the show, so it's great to be back. We're here with Kevin. How are you both doing?
Great. Thank you.
Everyone's excited. It's been a while. So what we're going to do now for everyone that is watching us live, we're going to give you a little bit of a rundown of the GiveOnLIVE mission. I'm going to hand it over to Christina in just a moment. Just before then, I do want to remind you guys, anyone that's watching at the moment on any of our live streams, make sure to comment and interact. If you do have any questions, we will be giving some shout outs and answering some of your topics. And we have a really cool discussion today. We're talking about verification on the blockchain, but from fake news all the way through to fake watches with the guys from VID and Wordproof as well. But first, Christiana, you got some GiveOnLIVE updates for us, so can you take it away?
Yes, I'm just so very excited to share what's going on. So GiveOnLIVE, our mission is to create immersive experiences online and to empower creators. So we have great hosts like Jessica and Kevin, different hosts that do different topics. Our purpose is to get their voices out to those out there, like you guys watching right now. So we are really excited that we have basically launched a new show that we'll tell you about later, but we're going to have an MVP, basically an app ready for a brand new experience in the new year. So get ready for 2021. We're going to have a new app. So there's not going to be Zoom links and StreamYard links. We're so grateful for all those technologies. But we're going to have one place to log in, one place to see everything, and to be able to connect and engage with your audience members and with your fellow speakers. So we're really excited for that.
You must have been busy then if you've been making an app in this time. I thought I hadn't heard from you in a while. So what else can we expect from the app? Give us like a little bit of a rundown. What other features will it have?
Sure. Thank you. So yeah, I call this my my app moon instead of our honeymoon, because it takes a lot of love to keep going in this kind of startup world. And so what you're going to expect is that there's going to be basically an interface where you can jump into the different streams. So there's text stream, there's soul stream, there's music stream. So you're going to be able to jump in. You're going to be able to see who's watching and pretty easily go and see their profile, go check out their Twitter, so that it's not only just watching, but also being able to connect with those people that are watching the same things that you like. And then adding them to your calendar, getting the updates, and basically being able to follow people and know what they're watching as well.
Very cool. And speaking about watching as well, because I think everyone's eyes today has been on, and Kevin, I want to ask you about this in a second. Everyone's eyes has been on Bitcoin if it's going to hit 12K anytime soon. So right now, because we are live, and the beauty of that is we can tune in, we're at $11,964 US dollars. Wow. So I think we'll keep an eye, but whoever spots it first in the group chat and the comments, be sure to ping it in there. We'll give you a shout out if you're the first one to all eyes on the prize, babe. We've been watching things closely. So very exciting. Kevin, what's been up with you lately? How's everything been going with your end in Vilnius, Lithuania?
No, Estonia. Tallinn, Estonia. Close. Geographically close. I don't know. I'm not Estonian, so that doesn't offend me. If I was, I might be quite upset. But yeah, geographically, we're pretty close. But yeah, same old here, working, building, trying to... as Christiana already mentioned, that being an entrepreneur can sometimes have lots of ups and downs. So I've been on that roller coaster for years now. So generally, used to it. But every once in a while, you need to get the barf bag out, because you hit some really tough corners, or I don't know, you speed up and you run into issues you never thought you'd run into. But yeah, ups and downs, but definitely still progressing forward and trying to build things that people want to use, which is, I guess, what everybody tries to do when you're an entrepreneur, especially in fintech. If you build something that's great but nobody uses it, well, I guess you failed. So yeah, just trying to get things done. And generally, we are getting things done, so that's good. Obviously, the nice pop in Bitcoin price, and I guess the run up into the U.S. election as well is going to be quite interesting from price angle, but also just. Yeah. I was never really interested in politics, but I tell you what, I guess you can't not be somewhat interested in politics, regardless of where you are in the world, considering the absolutely crazy race that's currently being run, and we're coming down to the wire. So it's definitely going to have an effect on pricing moving forward, and it very well potentially could be one of the reasons why we're seeing Bitcoin start to move in the run up to the election as well.
Mm-hmm. And Christiana, as all three of us here, you're probably the one with the closest ties and connections to people that are in the US at the moment. What's the sentiment right now? Because it seems like a very turbulent but also exciting time.
Sure. I mean, it's a very tricky topic, and I think there's a lot. I mean, the issue now with everything leading up to this particular election, with the George Floyd murder and these racial tensions, and then also political tensions that were already there, and it's just an accumulated just storm. It's not the perfect storm. It's maybe the worst storm. 2020 has delivered as expected, and I do believe that it's really angry. There's this angry sentiment. There's I think more than any other election, and grain of salt, I barely live in the United States. I barely go to that place. But it seems like both sides are very kind of angry against each other. Do you feel that, Kevin?
Yeah. I think it's kind of crazy that we went from, 8 years ago or 4 years ago even, or 12 years ago, you had, Barack Obama elected first Black president. There was a lot of this kind of change and hope in the air. And now the US voters have the choice between two really old senile white guys, which kind of tells me we kind of went, it kind of took a step forward to take 12 steps back. Which kind of tells you a little bit about the electorate, unfortunately, as well, in that kind of wanted to open up a narrow little bit of change 12 years ago, but decided they didn't like that change, and now for some reason we're right back where we started. So it kind of tells you a lot about the electorate as well, the people voting, basically, which is kind of saddening to a certain extent, and kind of disheartening. But
actually. And to anyone that hasn't watched, there's a documentary on Netflix which gives really good insight into just some of the kind of the political stance in the US when it comes to who's eligible to vote and who isn't. And for example, if people have ever served a prison sentence in certain states, they're ineligible, and they have to physically go to court and kind of bridge that gap, and also kind of make a case on why they're eligible to vote again. So that was really, really interesting to me. It opened my eyes up a lot, and I definitely recommend it if anyone hasn't watched it. But I think we're also seeing, on a positive note, a lot of influencers take to their social media platforms to really encourage people to go ahead and vote, which we've never seen to such an extent before. And younger people hopefully will get involved. So I think things are slowly starting to maybe take shape from a younger point of view, and maybe things will. I'm trying to be optimistic and see how things will go in the long run.
To be fair, you've never really had an election anywhere in the world that's been so, I guess, close to the people, in the sense that you have the president who tweets at 4 a.m. You have all these different kind of mediums that people are able to use now. It used to be, the campaigns would end up spending hundreds of millions on just television ads. Nobody spends on TV anymore, for the most part. Now it's all about trying to reach each individual voter through social media and through other means. So definitely that's probably one of the reasons why there's more younger people. Also, people tend to react more when they're pissed than when they're happy. So it's like either you're super pissed about, this side, or super pissed about that side, but generally you're just upset. And that usually makes people react, more than being happy. When you're happy, you get complacent. When you're pissed, you get reactive. You actually want to see change. When you're happy, you're just like, whatever, and everything's great. So yeah, potentially it's going to push a lot more people to vote. Not so much because not even, and the crazy thing is I don't think people will generally vote one side or the other because they like the candidate or their policies. They're voting because they hate the other one. Literally.
Hate, fueled by hate.
Yes, they spite, hate, and just really do not like the other person. So they just go on the other side, which is, again, just I don't know. It's interesting. I wouldn't say it's good, but it's very interesting from the outside in, because I'm a U.S. citizen, haven't lived there in 22 years. So it doesn't affect me so much directly. But from the outside, it's super interesting. That's for sure. Like, it's something I think that will be in, history books, and when you study political science, this will definitely be an election that falls into, the political science major for the next, 100 years, probably.
2020 in a history book. We should just close that and just like
throw a really
it
big book that no one wants to read is literally what 2020 is. Yeah.
It's true what you said, though, about the fact that humans naturally, unfortunately, will really act upon hate. And if we look at the cryptocurrency space, I mean, Bitcoin was not created because people were so enthusiastic about the monetary system that they just wanted to add to it and contribute. Unfortunately, it was dissatisfaction with a certain structure and the ability to add to a new concept. So, and even me personally, I know the best things I've done is when I've been pissed off at the world and stubborn and gone, I'll show you and I'll make a change. And you guys are both nodding, so I hope it's not just me on this one. So the next few months we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah. If you notice, right before the election, we had some major players make some major purchases of Bitcoin, and that tells a lot about potentially what is going to be happening with the market. And they always move ahead of.
Yeah, I think from that point you have, you have the Republicans in general tend to cut regulatory red tape in the U.S. That's how they function. That's usually one of their big kind of ticket items, and when they try to get voted in. And Trump has signed a lot of executive orders to take away a lot of regulation. And the premise is that if the Democrats win, that immediately upon entering office in January, most of that regulation will be put back into place, which will tax, the rich slightly higher, which will add back inheritance taxes and other things that generally affect those guys' wealth. And that's the reason why you're probably going to see run-ups in, basically people them running up into, let's say, between November and January, markets may tend to look like they're doing well. But at some point, they start to cash out because they want to cash out before laws are changed, which may affect their bottom line. So we're probably going to see a bit of in all markets, whether that be in equity markets, whether it be crypto, just kind of a nice little bull run. It'll get everybody excited, and then if you see Democrats actually win in November, expect that towards December and January, you see a very sharp, deep fall from highs that would probably last several months into the new term, simply because of the fact that regulation will probably be put back in place, laws will be put back in place, taxes will probably be adjusted, especially on the wealth.
Very interesting. And I know this isn't kind of financial advice from you, Kevin, because you do work for an exchange, but just when it comes to ensuring a little bit of trader safety, I think you've mentioned that it's going to be a very volatile set to be few months. Is there any safety hints and tips you can give some of our viewers that might give some insight to them and just how to position themselves in the next few months?
Sure. I mean, the caveat always goes, you don't ever put money up you can't afford to lose. And there definitely will be extreme heightened volatility, especially around the days of the election. And if it's a contested election, which I would have to imagine it will be. Normally, you don't see a contested election for presidents unless it's super close. Like, it has to be literally within, like Bush Gore was the last one in the US where you had these, chads and all these different vote counting. It took almost a month to go through all these different vote counts in Florida. And then eventually they called the official winner. And here I don't expect the popular vote to be close, but either way it swings, it's going to be contested. And that will add in uncertainty. And the worst thing for any market is uncertainty. Having certainty about something that's bad is much better than having uncertainty at all. So bad news is actually not the worst thing for the market, but uncertainty is terrible. So the longer that uncertainty goes, and it can go all the way through to January, meaning that between November and January, you could have a very volatile, very upset, very uncertain market. So normally what most people would do, what most people would tell you to do is you kind of go to cash. The problem is that most people, when they go to cash, go to USD. But here we're talking about basically an election, obviously, in the US, the one that can affect the entire world as far as the economy goes. But definitely, do you really want to be in USD at the time? However, I would suspect and I may be wrong, but I would suspect as volatility rises, USD will gain strength. So most people will be expecting, laymen will be expecting that the US dollar will lose value because of that uncertainty. I would say the opposite. I would say that going to cash, at least with some of your assets, probably makes a lot of sense. Now, that could be a stable coin if you're in crypto. It doesn't mean you have to buy US dollars per se. But going to cash with some of your assets would make sense, unless you're really, you're a trader that's been through this before and understands volatility and knows how to deal with it. But you don't want to watch your portfolio go down by 20, 30, 40%, in a few days, weeks, hours. And that potentially is what could happen leading up to and after the election. So being in cash, being in something that's not so volatile, stable coin or cash or otherwise, is probably the best bet. Bonds, even bonds, even treasury notes, anything that is just, that'll give you a bit of a more stable hold until you see where that, volatility leads.
Because I'm sure Forex traders, and if anyone is in the chat that has experienced this, Forex traders have seen first US election where Trump was elected against Hillary Clinton. Brexit as well was also a very volatile. Brexit was a surprise. I was working in a Forex bank at the time, and it was a very turbulent time. I think a lot of people that I was speaking to did not factor in the decision that came out. But for crypto traders, this seems to be the biggest political event in a cryptocurrency trader's calendar when Bitcoin's been this high. I don't think there's been a previous event before this, which has really been when the cryptocurrency market had as much traction and circulation. Kevin, Christian, I'm not sure what you think, if there was anything that kind of even compares to this. Maybe the closest thing is the March COVID announcement, but politically there hasn't been anything this intense.
Definitely with Bitcoin at this level of as far as price goes, no, because the last real contentious kind of even if you just go back to when Trump was like 4 years ago, obviously 4 years ago, Bitcoin price was what, around 2K, something like that, 2-3K, around those levels. I think it had just done that like 1 to 2K doubling event, and I think it was kind of stuck around those 2K prices. And then very quickly after the election, after we saw the 2017, obviously we saw the run up towards 20K, and that was tied into the ICO bubble and everything else. And then obviously 4 years before that, I don't even know what Bitcoin was priced at 8 years ago, but it was, single, double, maybe triple digits, maybe. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. But yeah, as far as Bitcoin at very close to a high, and I would say awareness of Bitcoin definitely at a high, because 4 years ago, the amount of wallets, the amount of interaction, the amount of adoption rate of Bitcoin was still relatively low compared to where it is now. So I think we might not be at an all-time price high, but we're definitely at an all-time awareness high. And you're literally in probably, the most, I don't know, probably one of the most publicized and one of the most kind of talked about elections that ever has happened in the history of modern politics. So those two things probably won't, hopefully never repeat themselves, to be fair. But they may repeat themselves, but it probably won't happen, at least in my lifetime. I don't think we would see something like this again. It's kind of like Christiana mentioned, it's not you wouldn't want to call it a perfect storm, because it's not a situation I guess the perfect storm, actually, you don't want to be in a storm. The perfect storm you don't want to be in. So I guess in that sense, it definitely is almost like a perfect storm. But yeah, I don't think we've seen something like this before.
And I think if this was ever going to be a Hollywood movie and you'd sent your script to the producers, they would say, you're throwing in too many catalysts now. This is getting unrealistic. Take one or two out. No, we're seeing it and we're living it. So hats off to the entrepreneurs, people that are still pushing forward like you guys during this turbulent time. It has been challenging, but we're still getting some stuff done, and we will definitely have to wait and see. Now, I think for the next few minutes, I want you to have Gabriel come and join us to talk about some of his updates, or no?
Yeah, we're waiting on Gabriel. We're really excited to welcome him. Not exactly at this precise moment, but if he pops in, we'll definitely announce our special announcement with Gabriel, streaming in from Colombia. But again, on this topic and on major films, I would really love to recommend The Great Hack. So if you guys heard about Cambridge Analytica and how they were involved in the President Trump election and also in the Brexit campaign, it brings us back across the river. And I do recommend people go see that, and because that might inspire you to actually go vote after you see how technology And modern social media can be used and can be leveraged almost as a psychological warfare and being able to manipulate voters. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. And some people say, well, these are just tools that we are able to use, but to what end, to what means? And some people have the money to be using these tools, but it can be very manipulative. So it's a very interesting fine line of ethics.
I see a question here that popped up that was directed at me. I see on YouTube. Says, do you prefer bonds or cash above Bitcoin? I'm not saying I prefer either above Bitcoin in a general sense. I mean, if you're talking about portfolio management in general, you shouldn't have all your money in any one thing. But when you talk about historically speaking, and obviously taking in historical what happened in the past is never usually should be a good idea when you're talking about what will happen in the future. Things can always change. But when you're talking about Bitcoin's still a very volatile asset, it's still illiquid. It's not, comparatively speaking, any other asset. It is a risk-on asset. So anyone holding Bitcoin needs to understand that volatility and that risk. It doesn't make it a bad thing. But what it means is that when you know volatility is coming, then you should attempt to put some of your portfolio in something that potentially won't see the same volatility. So it's not a directly correlated asset. So bonds are one thing. Bonds, first of all, you get yield on bonds. So you gain some amount of yield. Depending on the bond you take, the higher risk you take, you may get more yield. You may get less yield, but more stability. So it's even then it's a question of risk. Do you take a government issued bond that potentially has a lower interest rate, but more than likely will be paid back? So less risk. Do you take a higher risk bond, but still maybe less risk than Bitcoin per se, but you're getting higher yield. So I would say that from oh, you mean right now? Okay, so he clarified himself. He means right.
I didn't want to interrupt you with the right now, but
yeah. So right now, I would be in Bitcoin till roughly the end of October into the first couple of days of November until the election happens in the U.S. When the election happens, I would have some of my assets. I would cash out around a high. I think if 12K is broken sustainably, obviously that 12K, actually 12 to 14K roughly in there. Once you break that, 20K is pretty swift in terms of support and resistance. Not much resistance between that 14K and 20K. Literally, there's almost nothing. So I would be waiting to kind of cash out on a high right before the election, as high as I possibly can cash out a portion and probably go back to cash. Let's say a stable coin, have that sitting in a stable coin in the account, waiting to see what the initial numbers from the election look like, and probably waiting a day or two to see if it looks like it's going to be contested. So trying to see before I made a decision whether I wanted to get back into Bitcoin, cash out some additional funds out of Bitcoin, take some profits, et cetera. So I would definitely be glued to my screen, that's for sure. And the only news I would really be watching would be the election count. It's the only thing that's going to matter between November 2nd and November 7th, something like that. Those 5 days, no one's going to be paying attention to anything else. Doesn't matter what happens. There could be a nuclear attack still.
And November the 3rd, which is a Tuesday, we'll have to catch up right here, and you can tell us all about what's happened. Right, Kevin, thanks so much for joining us for this half-hour slot. Just quickly for our viewers, where can they find you if they do want to hear more of your insights in the next few weeks?
Sure. So I can never do this right. At the number over here, somewhere around here, you see my at Kevin Mirko. So you can find me everywhere using that. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Telegram, Facebook. I think even, I don't know. You can find me everywhere. Just tag me somewhere, and I'll find you, or you'll find me, and then I find you, basically.
Kevin, thank you so much. Always, the only Kevin Mirko in the world, I think.
Yeah. There's a few of us, but I there's not many. We're a small group, I think.
You're the smartest one. Amazing. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. As always, it is a pleasure. Now, for everyone that is kind of watching and waiting for the next set of discussions, we now have a 1-hour discussion, which is verification on the blockchain and updates that we're going to see about timestamping and NFTs. And we've got a very cool set of guests. These are 3 gentlemen now that are joining that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, but guys, it's great to have you all join us live.
Hi, Jessica. Great to be here.
Hey, Jessica.
Thanks for having us.
Hi. Amazing to meet you all. So we've got Sebastian here from Wordproof. Great to have you. We had a brief introduction on Twitter, but it's the first time we're speaking. So great to see you. How are you doing?
Yeah, doing fine, and really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting us on the show. together with the
Absolutely.
heroes from VID. Yeah, it's
Exactly. And I think you guys, you three already know each other, which makes it a lot easier and much more of a cool conversation. We've got Joshua and Monix. Great to have you both from VID. How are you both today?
Yeah, I'm retired actually, so I hope Joshua's better.
Oh yeah,
You're live, so you're live, so I'm sure you'll wake up in just a second anyway. Oh, you've got the coffee there as well, like Ivan on textile. We love to see
I
it.
thought I thought I'd bring Marnix a coffee, so here you go.
Thanks, mate. I have my Coke right here, so I'm doing fine. And how are you, Jessica?
I'm really good. And also, guys, I'm really excited for this conversation. So when Christiana told me the GiveOnLIVE shows are always really fun, but normally we speak about a breaking news topic, which might be a little bit of a bad omen for the cryptocurrency or blockchain space. But this discussion today is something which is positive, influential for the space. We're talking about timestamping and verification, blockchain for assets, even verification on something as broad as fake news. And I think the potential for this is enormous. So what I want to do is start with going to each of you, and we'll start with you, Sebastian. Just give us one item which can be actually verified or timestamped on the blockchain. Before we do start, though, I do want to remind that anyone that's watching us live on YouTube or on the stream, send any comments that you have, and I'll be reading those out, and again, the questions answered throughout the show. But Sebastian, I want to start with you. Can you give me just one thing that can be timestamped that maybe surprised you during your education into this sphere?
Yeah, for us, the thing we do at WordProof is mostly about content, so timestamping news. And what that does is when you see on The Guardian or whatever, last timestamp or last edited 2 hours ago, you could say, wow, Guardian, that's super transparent. Thank you. But you could also be suspicious. What was there 2 hours ago that I'm not allowed to see anymore? With timestamps, you bring transparency and maybe a journalist who says, I was the one who wrote it. So in a way, timestamping news, that's the use case we do. Transparency and accountability with blockchain timestamps. That's the company answer. But what I think is really cool is a watch we timestamped. It's one of the coolest Rolexes. We did that together with the guys at VID. So let's switch over to them.
Amazing. And we'll get back more into the topic of news, because as even Rick Reams has just commented now, so much potential, and I do have to agree with him there. But Joshua, I want to go to you now. Maybe something that will surprise our viewers. Can you give us one example of something that can be timestamped or authenticated on the blockchain?
Well, so currently, I think for me, I thought the Rembrandt edge that we did was an amazing piece. But I think luxury goods in any case can be amazing to timestamp on a business or on the blockchain and verify the authenticity. So it can go as far as something super luxurious. But I think personally, I'm a data guy, and anything that's IoT related, I think that's amazing for us to be able to verify the authenticity of, because we make so many decisions based on those types of information.
And the impact then, the potential from these decisions can really be huge and profitable or kind of turbulent for a business as well. So it sounds like there's a lot of responsibility, and that would help ease the process. And Monix, what about you? Can you give us one example that maybe stands out for you?
Yeah, well, the thing that keeps me up at night the last few weeks was stock certificates. So having a tool to trade stocks, to transfer stocks to someone else. And yeah, we've been talking to Rick from LTO Network with it even today. And yeah, has so much potential. So yeah, that really keeps me up. And I have all these ideas, and I get out of bed, write them down, and then I can sleep again.
And what is amazing, all three examples that you've given me have all so different, but they all will impact people in their different day-to-day lives in different ways. And these are really interesting. I want to get an idea of some of the biggest challenges that do come from this timestamping. So first of all, is timestamping of a concept, just to explain to our viewers, can you only timestamp something once it's been created, or is vintage items also, do they have the ability? Sebastian, you mentioned a vintage watch, so maybe I can go to you first.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, I hear myself echoing. Is that
the sound here is okay?
Okay, perfect. So what you can do, for example, in art, what makes art valuable? Or let's keep the example of the watches. A watch comes with a certificate, and there's kind of a second-hand marketplace, not only in the Rolexes, but also in the papers around the Rolexes. And there's a lot of people who are trying to recreate papers that come with watches. So it's hard to, just the papers doesn't keep you safe as a buyer. What you can do if you have a timestamp and a timestamp certificate, with a blockchain was invented in 1991 for timestamping documents to prove the integrity of information. With the private key behind a blockchain address or blockchain wallet, you can prove that you are you. But the interesting movement in the blockchain space is blockchain identity. Am I really the one who's giving out this information? So that could be the manufacturer, the Rolex manufacturer, but also the one who opens the watch, cleans it, checks it, says something about the quality, and closes the watch before it's sold. And then you have a watch shop, you have the people working at the watch shop, they can put their timestamp, their fingerprint on the information that you put with the timestamp, so that in fact, they are the one who certify it. That's what you do. When you buy at a shop, you trust that shop in selling you a good watch. You trust that shop in having the right people on the payroll to check your watch, to repair your watch. With timestamping, you can represent one-on-one what happens under the hood of that shop. So the people who are working there, the people who are controlling the watch, maybe even Rolex themselves, saying, "Hey, these parts in the machine are verified by us." So you can make the whole trail of parts in that watch and the information around that watch transparent with timestamping. So it's not just the timestamp, but also the identity or identities that are tied to a timestamp. So that's what keeps all of us up at night, to make the timestamps a way to represent what's going on in the real world.
And you've made a really interesting point, because for some of the people that you might be explaining this concept to that are new to this technology, they must ask you some of the questions. And one question that always comes to me when I bring this up to people is, well, what if the timestamp isn't authentic?
Right?
Yeah. Oh, Marnix?
Yeah, that's the most important part, because I could claim, we say this more often, I could claim to be the one who painted the Mona Lisa, and then I could timestamp that fact. But of course, it doesn't make it true. So what is most important in our process is that we verify that the expert is who he says he is, and that the expert will get a publisher wallet and do the transaction of the timestamp of the certificate with that wallet, and then we know for sure that the expert is who he says he is, and that the expert certificate is to be trusted. So yeah, timestamps per se are not to be trusted, but timestamps done by the right person are.
Really interesting point. And I had this discussion with a woman called Yael Tamar about 2 years ago, and she's based out of Israel, but she gave me the example of in India, this story came out where there was a plot of land that was sold to 100 different farmers in a cash transaction, and actually it was the same plot of land, and for an agricultural space where technology isn't as adept, it automatically meant that people were set back for quite a lot. And timestamping of something as simple as leases of houses, for example, where you actually do need to verify who was the last person. Am I buying it from the seller or just a kind of external party that doesn't have the rights to do so? So there's a lot of power that comes into play, but probably a lot of problems as well. And yep. I think what's interesting is you guys have all had experience in actually implementing this. You mentioned stocks there. So how is it implemented in stock certificates? How would that come about?
Yeah, we're still working on that. I think Joshua's the expert on that as well. So we got the technique ready, but to have it also legally ready, and to also have like a judge saying the right things after someone claims it is his piece of land or his stock, that is something else than having it technically ready. But yeah, in the Netherlands and also in some other countries in Europe, yeah, it is ready for that. But Josh, please.
Yeah, so we have a lot of laws in the Netherlands that are tied in with the notary function that we have, and that those occupations are there to provide a guarantee of a certain document being legit, and as well as it being part of the legal system that we're living in with this society. And having technological advancement made to have these stocks on the blockchain also must mean that we can tie those up to those regulatory systems that we've already built. Well, somebody just said that I'm echoing. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit.
Anyway, so it kind of depends on.
We can still hear you. It's okay.
Okay, perfect. So it really depends on how fast we can implement these technological advancements and couple them to these regulatory bodies to make sure that we have one big synergy of added value on all sides.
Yeah, because with the Rembrandt verifying, that part is easy. It just takes one person with brains to see that he has bought the real thing or he's going to buy the real thing. But it is something else to transfer someone's rights and of the ownage of that piece, and then makes sense.
On the stock use case, it's interesting because we started as a WordPress plugin, so it's really easy. In 5 minutes, you can set it up and timestamp the information. It's not tied to identity and stuff like that, but it does a timestamp. So it's really a basic application of it as a start. What we see is a financial firm, and what they do, it's not their stocks, but what they do is they do advices on a weekly basis, what to buy and what to sell. And what they do is they timestamp their advice on a weekly basis to show that they didn't tamper with their advices. So it's a way to hold them accountable to their public. Yeah, so it's that's the funny thing with WordProof. It's just on the internet, and people use it for whatever things we didn't think of, and that's one of the simplest use cases. So the big stuff is coming, exactly as Joshua and Marnix are telling about, but we see people playing around with just the concept of timestamping, and that's so much fun of this open source space we're all in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think you have to almost play around with it to work out where it's best used. A lot of the time the technology comes in, but then how it's used and how it's implemented might surprise all three of us in a few months' time. And we do have one question already as well, which I'll locate to the VID guys, asking, would it be possible to transfer stocks outside exchanges when the stock certificate is certified by VIDT as an NFT? Joshua, are you the guy to answer that yet?
Yeah, the short answer is most definitely. And that is because that NFT will represent the proof of ownership of you owning that certain stock or certificate of a stock. And by transferring this NFT to a new wallet, in theory, would make you the new legal owner, except, or at least not accept. That's the answer in the end. But as we just previously mentioned, I have to make sure that I explain this correctly, that we're not legally there yet, but we're very close. So when it is all legally set up, then definitely sending your NFT to somebody else will transfer the ownership of the stocks. But for now, we're still making sure that this system works legally as well.
Yep, but when you take like the NFT for a Rolex, then it would just be logical that you would only transfer the real Rolex together with the NFT. And then if someone would offer a Rolex that looks similar but doesn't own an NFT with it, then you would know, hey, there's something going on here. There's supposed to be an NFT with this watch, so why doesn't this guy have one? And so that's a step towards them going together, and we're trying to do the same with stock certificates as well. But yeah, unfortunately there are still notaries involved in that process, but yeah, who knows in a few years.
And I was actually looking into some kind of artwork sales and just, I guess, the cool value of some of these products, because I think when you understand the huge asset value behind these vintage art pieces or vintage timepieces, as you guys have mentioned, then it helps you understand why this is important. And I actually looked at this one story that came out last year regarding some police in Italy. They were given the heads up that actually there was a Flemish master's painting that was worth 3 billion rather euros. They had a tip-off a month prior, and they actually replaced it with an artificial, a fake. And then when the robbers came in into this massive heist and actually managed to get away with the artificial, they then realized, because the police had announced, that they'd replaced it with the real one. So in this kind of situation, at what point would timestamping have come into play?
Yeah, I guess.
Josh?
Go ahead,
Marnix.
Well, I would say before you would replace it for a forgery or replica, then you want to make sure that you still know what is the right one. And you would do that with making micro pictures of unique features of the work, perhaps micro pictures of the background showing unique spots and etc. And then have an expert draft up a certificate of all those unique features, and then timestamp that certificate. Then you could replace it, and of course, then prove afterwards what is the real one. But yeah, that of course is always something strange with art. I could like hang a Van Gogh in my room and feel great about it, but I could also hang a replica. Yeah, it looks similar, it looks the same. The only thing that's different is the vibe around it and knowing you have the real thing, and that's like a few $1 million of difference. But of course, yeah, it's something crazy because visually they appear the same. But yeah, to protect that feeling and to protect that sense of authenticity, yeah, our tech can come and play, and Sebastian's tech comes in play, and yeah, we can make that process easier.
And what you've said there is very interesting, because I think the phrasing of timestamp makes something sound quite small and simple, but you've gone into there just the sheer detail that does go into each and individual piece, just to really ensure that it is completely validated and that none of these minor details are missed. And I think that's a really imperative thing that people have to remember when it comes into timestamping these valuables. Sebastian, was there anything you wanted to add there?
No, I think it's exactly what Marnix says. And the thing is, it doesn't only have value because, for example, you could say the best way is if the painter herself or himself puts the timestamp on it. So from now on, that's possible. But if the painting was from before 1991, it wasn't possible.
Yeah,
difficult. And the watch example I gave. With watches, it's a bit easier, as most luxury watches, they have a unique serial number on them. So also for the police, for example, they have a whole register of stolen watches. But what you can do there is, if the one who controls the watch or sells the watch, or the institute where you buy the secondhand watch, they are kind of an authority. So if they say, hey, we declare this a real Rolex or a real whatever brand you like, from then it's about reputation that they have, and they can prove that reputation with the blockchain wallet, holding the NFTs of the watches they have in shop, seeing the transactions of the watches they sold in the past. So they are building a reputation around their blockchain wallet.
Yep, and the great bridge there is for us having social privileges come in play. So, for instance, you have I don't know, Nike shoes or Gucci bags, whatever, and sometimes even the fake ones come from the same factory and come on the market. So there's visually no difference. The only difference is that you paid like a few €100 for that bag or that shoe, and you want to make sure you have the real thing. And yeah, if you just issue an NFT together with the original one, putting that NFT in your wallet and giving you privileges because you are the owner of that NFT, then you're really buying the unique experience instead of being in doubt if you have the real thing.
So also incentivizing users and owners to also verify and timestamp, just so you can kind of keep this circulation and this trust ecosystem as well.
Yep, indeed, and rewarding people to own the real thing. So, for instance, if you have a Nike NFT in your phone's wallet, you get a discount in a shop, or commercials you walk by change because they see there's a Nike Jordan owner walking by. So you can do all that kinds of stuff because fakes will only get more sophisticated and even real like the real ones. So you want to reward the people who are buying the unique pieces.
And just to add to that,
Joshua, you go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, apologies. Now, just to add to it, in the end, a timestamp is a declaration of anything, right? We declare something to be true at a certain point in time, and having declarations of everything that is true makes everything that's not declared automatically incorrect. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at in this conversation here, is that in the end, if everything is declared to be true, then we can trust everything that is declared, basically. And especially in these kinds of use cases where we can sort of trust the system at that point of time, we can build new business models or new functional models around using the system, which is a great opportunity for us to grow into a new scale of whatever it may be at that moment of time.
Yeah, that's what Sebastian's doing, and that's why I really love his tech. Is having like news websites and content pages timestamped. And if everyone is doing that, then you cannot trust the ones who are not doing that. And you turn around. And could you tell something about the SEO part WordProof is doing with Joost, Sebastian? Because I really love that piece.
Yes,
Sebastian, I would love to pick your brains with this, because I think as well in the build up to US elections, we really want to hear. I think the phrase fake news was something as someone as a content creator, I do want to pick your brains. Where's the concept come from? Can you explain some more about the project?
Yeah, so shall I do a small intro in WordProof, and then we can discuss the search engine case and the fake news case?
Fantastic. For people that have just joined, that would be great.
Can I? There was this one question regarding the NFT, so that we can sort of close that. And it was Diederik who asked it. He was asking if we can use a notary right now to prove the legitimacy of a NFT technology using a notary. And most definitely, Diederik, the problem here is that we need to be able to tie these stocks to registries. And it doesn't matter what the notary thinks of the technology at the moment, as long as these registries are completely notarized, so to say. So as long as the notary allows to sort of guarantee this registry, then definitely anything is possible. And that's where, for example, the Dutch Blockchain Coalition could definitely help, because they have a big number of big companies, enterprises, governmental influence that we can use to adopt this system at a very high rate, instead of like the adoption that small companies have, because that's a way slower compared to this big moving force that the Dutch Blockchain Coalition can be. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Now, Sebastian, I do want to pick your brains. For everyone that has just joined now, we're talking about kind of timestamping, and what Sebastian does is very different. It is timestamping of news SEO, as you've mentioned. So Sebastian, can you give us some context on what you're doing? Because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, sure. And Joshua, I promise I'll end with NFT, so we can pick it up from there. So,
thanks.
What we say, I'm a big fan of the internet, and even though the internet has brought us many good things, it has a deep-rooted issue, and it's with trust. Here in Europe, 29% of all Europeans, they are kind of suspicious of the internet, and over 86% have said that they've fallen for fake news at least once. And we thought, hey, how does that come? And in the end, it's quite obvious, as the internet was designed to connect computers to computers. And computers, they do not dream, they do not care about power, self-enrichment, as they have no egos. But we humans do. And therefore, we now have fraud and manipulation and theft on the internet on a daily basis, which echoes back to the real world. And so what we say at WordProof is, to save the world, we need to fix the internet. We must make trust or truth or trustworthiness part of the DNA of the internet. And that thing, what is trust? Trust has two building blocks. A, it's transparency. How did something change over time? And it has accountability. Who sent it? And exactly those two things are what you can do with timestamps. So with timestamps, we can make trust part of the internet's DNA, starting with publishers. It's a use case that works today. The thing that I told you on the beginning, show how information changed over time. You can prove with a timestamp that specific content existed at a specific moment in time, and with the identity tied to the timestamp, you can show who was the sender of it. Was it really that journalist, news outlet, politician? In fact, we say anything, any content that impacts your life in a way, voting behavior, whatever it may be, it must be timestamped. And in 5 years from now, if you don't timestamp your information, you're being considered a fraud. What are you hiding? Proving that you didn't tamper with your information or showing who was the sender of it, that's nice for consumers, as they can check how information changed over time. But there are other stakeholders in the internet that have a benefit by seeing that you didn't tamper the information. And the biggest stakeholder we all know is, for example, a Google or search engines. If you, as a content maker, Jessica, if you create a blog and days after or months after you just changed the date of that blog, you rank higher in the search engines for some days, maybe some weeks, as Google thinks, or search engines thinks, that it's new information you added to it. It's the simplest form of small fraud with a search engine. With a timestamp, you can prove that you didn't tamper your information. With a certificate, you can see that as a visitor. But what we're doing is, search engines, they read information on the internet via schema.org, structured data. Everyone who's into search engine optimization knows about schema.org. And what we do is outputting the timestamp, both the timestamp itself as a link to a block explorer, to schema.org, and to make sure that search engines can easily read, or check, verify the information. And that's an interesting use case for search engines to show that you didn't tamper with that information. That's A, changing the date. But secondly, if another thing that a lot of content makers see is copyright infringement, or people copying the information. That's what they call duplicated content in search engines. So if you're a small website, you publish information and it didn't get indexed by a search engine, then a big website copies that information and gets ranked or gets indexed by the search engine first, then the small site can get a penalty because, the Google thinks that the small website copied the content from the big website. With timestamps, you can indisputably prove that you didn't tamper with that information. So it's timestamping in its simplest form, even without identity connected, solves big issues in search engines. And then the next step, if you connect the NFTs to it, could be that you can not only have an NFT representing the ownership of a watch or Andy Warhol or Keith Haring, but also of a piece of content representing the revisions, but also the people who worked on that content. And when you sell, for example, a news outlet, or you as a freelance writer, whatever, you can really get the ownership and transfer the ownership of content, or do the licensing of content, all from that NFT, showing if it was permissioned or unpermissioned. So that's a long answer on your short question. Sorry, Jessica, but that gives the overview.
But you know what you've done is you've really perfectly highlighted the different parts here, because I think what everyone can use as an example is Wikipedia. The fact that Wikipedia is a public page, people can go and create Wikipedia pages, or also edit them as well. So what you're giving an explanation of is the perfect example of these things do need to be tracked and traced, and you do need to be able to verify where the information has come from. But where do you think this should be required from? Do you think this should be a legal requirement, or do you think it should come from the end user? Because I know we saw recently with web pages the SSL certifications on certain websites. Is it something that you think should be regulated, or is it something that you think consumers need to see?
I will tell you in 30 seconds exactly who needs to be involved in this story. It's quite easy. So we need the policymakers. So Europe, for example, they had GDPR. So the internet was a mess, a law of the jungle. Then they had GDPR to give some better rights for the citizens of Europe and now for the whole world. But a logical next step is building what we say a trusted web, where all information that comes to that citizen must be transparent and accountable when it impacts the lives of those people. So firstly, policymakers, law of the jungle, then we had GDPR, then we had trusted web. Where all timestamped or all information is timestamped. Then we need the big tech to at least the search engines to say, hey, when information is timestamped and transparent, it ranks higher. And when there's an identity tied to it, then it need to rank even higher. Policymakers can force companies to timestamp, firstly, the terms and conditions, and secondly, everything that impacts information like news. Big tech can reward it. And what other force is playing there could be advertisers. A big problem in advertising is that people who are advertising, they want to protect their brand. They want their brand to be advertised next to quality content instead of shitty content. With timestamps, you can prove that you didn't tamper with information, or that the information on a news outlet is written by a journalist, for example. So what we need is a boycott from all advertisers saying, I only want to advertise when it's really a journalistic production, for example. Or with timestamping, you can demand or categorize information on the web, and based on that, as an advertiser, you can raise the bar of quality which you advertise your brand with. So it's working together. Consumers should demand it. Advertisers will demand it, absolutely, as they want a high-quality context. Policymakers will do it as the 3 steps: law of the jungle, GDPR, and trusted web. And then the big tech will reward it in a positive way.
Amazing. So, and you mentioned that.
Sorry.
I love this guy speak. It's amazing. We need this. We need these kinds of visionaries in the space to, push the new innovative technology.
No, but the thing is, and the use case we did with VID together is an amazing one. They already timestamped, or the watch is called, or the shop is called Amsterdam Vintage Watches. Mm-hmm. They make, for example, Ellen DeGeneres, if she buys a Rolex, she buys it there. And the guys already did an NFT for one of the earlier watches. And what we do together now is VID made massive steps already on the blockchain identity part. They're really far in that. We are really far in timestamping content, doing it and en masse on news outlets in and outside the Netherlands. But what we did together is bringing the whole trail. So they do the timestamping, the NFT of the watch itself. We do the timestamping of the terms and conditions and the product information. So it's not only the sell, but also the information based on what the buyer does to sell. So it brings transparency and accountability, not only to the product, but also to all the information around it. And information is quite important in this era.
It is. And for people that have just joined us now, we are now half an hour into the conversation, but you're not too late to kind of join in, and we will kind of give you a quick little recap on what we've talked about. We're talking about timestamping and providing validation certification of assets, but also, as Sebastian explained, information. And a phrase that has kept coming up now has been NFTs and just how important they are. But for some of our viewers, they might not have heard the phrase before. So maybe, Joshua, you can give our viewers a little bit of context. Just taking it back a step, what is an NFT?
Yeah, so there's 2 types of tokens that we have in the blockchain technology right now. It's the non-fungible tokens, which is the NFTs, and the typical coins / tokens that we know, for example, Bitcoin. And the NFTs are sort of like a 1 coin per entity type of token, right? We cannot replace those. There's always only one of them, and they represent a unique value. So this token is the only one in existence of this kind. It's basically what we're saying per NFT, right? And what we can do with these NFTs, we can create new use cases in which we tie these NFTs to a digital entity, a profile, a physical object, for example. And now we can prove using the NFT who is owning this whatever we coupled it with. And I think that's sort of the use case that we're expanding on at the moment, wherein these NFTs are used to kind of create a proof of ownership.
And we have got the use case actually up and running. You mentioned the collaboration between Wordproof and VID as well, which, as you guys have said, was Amsterdam vintage watches, I think. And as a kind of a vintage jewelry lover, I was really excited to have this conversation. Just validation of these kind of timepieces and the value they have. Can you explain to our viewers, any one of you, maybe Marnix, we'll start with you, what actually the collaboration between the two organizations has been and how it came about and where it is today?
Yeah, so we are always focused on PDFs and on data. And Sebastian's company always on content. They started with a WordPress plugin, but now they have plugins of all kinds of website builders. And so we used to protect the authenticity of PDF files, for instance. And we created PDF files for a vintage piece, for a Rembrandt, for an oil certificate, for a diploma, etc., etc. But it didn't make it unique yet. So you could still copy that PDF and have someone else own that PDF. And now with the non-fungible tokens, they being unique, we have made also a unique combination in storing the unique hash of that PDF, of the PDF certificate within the NFT token. So other examples of NFTs often refer to a web page or to a unique number, but it actually still makes it dynamic. And we put the hash of a unique certificate within that token and making it, almost like double unique. So if you transfer the token, you always have the reference to the protected certificate. And that is our new basis. And that is what really keeps us going now, because it has so many use cases, and it's actually a blessing and a curse, because we used to have like a very focused approach, so focus on PDF files, focus on CSV files, and now we have that whole spectrum of possibilities. And Joshua really needs to protect me of keeping my focus.
And the interesting thing is, imagine the opposite. So I buy a watch and I have the NFT from VID, and what happens? The watch gets stolen in the sad occasion. Then if I buy a watch, what I can imagine when a watch is stolen, that in the NFT will be said, watch out, this watch is stolen. Which devalues the watch with maybe 70 or 80%, as anyone can see, oh, I'm about to buy this watch. This is the serial number. It's easy to find on most products. Hey, it's stolen. I can't buy it here. So, and then policymakers must say, when you have, as a watch seller, a stolen watch in your company, you must close shop immediately. Policies like that will come in place. But also with NFTs, it's really easy for a watch lover to verify if a watch is stolen. So that's the function that an NFT can do in the use cases Marnix just described.
Especially when you have the combination, so you have the PDF certificate describing that watch, and if I would get that certificate and verify it, it would show the relationship to that unique NFT token, and indeed, as Sebastian says, that could display, hey, this watch has been stolen, and this NFT is from this owner. So literally, watch out.
Watch out. And this conversation has come around in the perfect time as well, because when we were looking into this, we also saw that Breitling has very recently looked to go live with an Ethereum-based system, which is digital certificates for their watches going forward. So I think it just really underlines that there is a huge market for this. It has been something that the industry has probably required for a very, very long time. And maybe you guys have gone to Baselworld in Switzerland, which is the large jewelry and watch expo. Have any of you ever been?
I've been to Basel Arts, not specifically the watch thing,
but very similar. And I think once you go, you do realize the huge potential of these very expensive and very sought after products as well. So when you saw the news that came out about Breitling, and maybe any of you want to explain to our viewers a little bit more detail on what Breitling are doing and how similar it is to you, and also how it will shape the industry going forward.
Yeah, for us it was great news because it was really a market validation. Yeah, we really don't mind someone else doing also something similar, genius. But yeah, we really like our approach because their approach doesn't have that unique document fingerprint within the NFT. So we still have that edge, and yeah, let's improve the world together. No harm done there.
And I think what's very interesting about it as well is, so I'm based out of Malta. In Malta, if you still try and pay, some restaurants actually accept crypto, which is still a step forward to other countries. But if you do go and ask a specific waitress or waiter, they might not necessarily understand how to process that transaction. So I'm sure for you both, the more organizations get involved with this, the more smaller, more independent watchmakers may start to recognize some of time stamping and how to validate as well. Because for a lot of traditional watchmakers across parts of Europe, it might seem like a very overwhelming concept to understand. Has that been a challenge for you guys?
I think so, yeah. Oh, sorry, guys.
No, go ahead, Josh.
The biggest challenge here, and I'm quite curious to see if Sebastian and Marnix agree with me, but I think the biggest challenge here is that usually when we in the sales industry, we kind of say, get as big of a piece of the pie as you can, which kind of relates to or references to the market share. But I think the more people work on the pie, the bigger the pie can be, and the bigger the pieces are for each person in this industry, right? And we need these kinds of projects like the Breitling project, but also the ones that we're doing together to build a bigger pie, so that people understand that it's nice pie. We should eat, get a piece.
Are
of
you
it,
hungry, Josh? Yep.
Yeah, I think it's time for some cake, I believe. But and I think together we can create a bigger industry, which we need in order to sustain this kinds of new innovative technologies.
Yep.
And to the only way to make this work is if Breitling and the NFTs from Amsterdam Vintage Watches and the NFT from Rolex themselves are all in the same language, all conform the same standards. So as I said, with content, it should be with schema.org. We work with people at Yoast. They run on 11 million websites. That's 16% of all active websites on the internet. We work with them to make to standardize everything timestamping. It's not a word-proof timestamp, it's a content timestamp to make sure that it's all in the same way that search engines can parse. There's a whole ecosystem around these timestamps. There's no trust needed in VID. There's no trust needed in word-proof to verify those timestamps. Otherwise, it won't be adopted as a standard. It's an open source space. So there's money in the token to timestamp. There's money in the ease of timestamping, the tools for verification, but those timestamps themselves, they're as open source as could be. Only if it's totally standardized, it will be adopted. In the watch scene, in the art scene, in the content scene, standardization is the way to go.
Yep, and this is also the first time we feel that corporates really get it, really get the token side of blockchain, because it used to be like the ugly, no offense to anyone, but the ugly piece of blockchain. The crypto side was a little bit still cowboy feel for corporate, for the corporate world, but now they really see tokenization happening, and NFT could be that bridge. And yeah, we already see that with large firms we are working with, that they finally see a spark from, hey, I get this. And if you get this done, this will be interesting. And because crypto is still for them, Sebastian, I think it's the same with the companies you speak with, it's still a bit, edgy for them.
And we have had one question that's just come in from a gentleman called Ken, which is asking about if NFTs will be introduced to diamond authentication as well.
Yep, perfect.
It's possible, I guess, right?
Yep,
sure,
exactly the same. diamonds, when you put them under a loop, have specific scratches and facets, and it's perfect. And we are already doing that with a company from Belgium, and yeah, makes it very easy to transfer now.
Well,
Actually,
what a year
diamonds
it sounds like. So you go ahead, Joshua.
Apologies. Yeah, diamonds make for sometimes an even easier use case because the nano engraving possibilities that we have to kind of make these diamonds unique. The biggest problem that we have with diamonds, but also the biggest impact we can make, is determining where they came from. And I think that's why diamonds are a very specific but very unique use case when it comes to these NFTs. And I think it's a great opportunity to do some real good for the world, because diamonds, there's a lot of negative and corruption, and there's some bad stuff to it. And I think proving the real ones that are ethical in a way is such a great way to improve the world.
Yeah, but those still remain a challenge, because you have to trust the one stating that they are ethical. So there's still a challenge there. But what Sebastian said earlier, the people who will state that will be accountable, and that will be a challenge for them. They really have to keep and speak the truth, because else they'll be accountable later. So yeah.
And lying becomes expensive you only have, if you connect it to your government ID and you're a checker of diamonds, and you can make an accident, but you must be transparent about the accident. But if you lie intentionally and you connect your government ID to it, it will be there for the rest of your life. So lying becomes expensive, and that's the great thing. In 5 years from now, what are you hiding if you don't timestamp? It will bring integrity, unprecedented integrity, to many facets.
And one question that I do have, because I think I can really see the clear use case for both of the very different SEO articles and news and information, and then also the kind of the jewelry, the assets, which also have a larger intrinsic value and also a kind of a vintage element. But the difference, I think, is time. I think you'd be able to get the diamond verified and have a little bit more time in that process. But Sebastian, if it is rolling news and something where it is time sensitive and this breaking news fight that we do see between news and press organizations, is that going to be a challenge that these larger media houses have to overcome when it comes to timestamping articles, for example?
So, for example, it has many facets. So there are many reasons for a publisher to timestamp. One could be that they can sell their pages for a higher CPM, cost per 1,000 impressions. It can be to prove the breaking. So, for example, a timestamp without an identity connected to it can help you in proving that you broke the news. There's one stat, and I don't know the exact number, but it's that I guess 60%-ish of all news is broken locally, but then a big publisher copies it. So with a timestamp, the small news outlet can prove that they were first with breaking the news, building up a reputation on that. So for proving that you were first, it's really easy. And also referring back to the search engine case, that you can show that the duplicated content is actually the same thing. With timestamping, as a small publisher, you can prove that you were first, not only to people, but also to search engine. With people, you build a reputation. With search engines, you build reputation, but you can also prove that you were first, making it that being small matters again. We're getting used to the big guys, the big girls, they take over my business, and I can't defend myself. With timestamps, you make a level playing field. Being small matters again, and that's the great thing there.
And Sebastian, for me, you're really underlining the importance of, Chinese whisper when it comes to news publications as well. If you're saying 60% actually can sometimes not be correct or informed, actually the fact that it can kind of be passed on to 8 or 9 different media sources is really a mind-blowing thought. So for our viewers now that are watching, we do have around 13 minutes left. So if anyone has any questions for Joshua, Marks, or Seb, feel free to drop them in. And what I'll do finally, guys, just to wrap up, because it sounds like you've all been so busy this year, and thank you all so much for sharing, is just what you guys have planned, and we'll go to each of you individually, for the next few months. If there's anything exciting that you're working on, Joshua, maybe you can start.
So we're working on so much. I have to like cherry pick what I can talk about. So, but for me, I think it's creating digital identities of whatever we're doing in an online space, so that we can automate the technological processes is something for me that I'm still very passionate about. So if we can, for example, build a profile around some data we've gathered from a sensor and use it to build a new profile that is a report to make something out of this data, I think that's such a great use case with so much potential going forward. And I definitely think that you will be hearing more about that coming from VID or from me myself. And it's something that I'm very enthusiastic about.
Fantastic. Seb, what about you?
So we are educating big tech, educating governments around the world, not only Europe, but also in the Canada and in some Asian countries, and on the power of timestamps. So we launched the WordProof Academy with a new video every 2 weeks. It's wordproof.com/academy. Secondly, what we do, we started as a WordPress plugin for 40% of all the websites on the web. We roll out to Shopify by the end of the year. That's the number 2 platform in the world. In the coming months, we are rolling out to the many big content management and shop systems. Furthermore, we're launching the Trusted Web Foundation. So, making an alliance of companies saying, many institutes around the world say the internet's broken, help, what do we need to do? But timestamping is a solution. So the Trusted Web will be about educating the world about how we can fix the internet with timestamps. And furthermore, we will work with the guys in VID, bringing transparency and accountability to the process of e-commerce, which is large. During COVID, we all learned that fake news can literally cost lives. We learned that e-commerce is so important to take us all our lives, so we can still do a bit of shopping from home. And we will make sure that we will fix the internet together in the Trusted Web Foundation, as that will echo back to society. A better internet is a better society, and timestamps will bring a better internet to all.
Wow. I now understand why you're drinking coffee, because you are like 100, you're getting so much done, and it's fantastic for you to share that. So thank you so much. You're like a steam train kind of breaking through the ecosystem. It's very cool. And Marnix, what about you? I know you and Joshua are working together on VID, but maybe there's any other points that you'd like to add regarding some future milestones that VID have looking forward.
So yeah, now specifically the B2B and B2C NFT projects, really enthusiastic about those, scaling up our team and having new partnerships, building it together with people like Sebastian, WordProof, LGU Network, Phantom Foundation. We're now focusing on Binance Smart Chain, a whole new network of people who can enable us to grow smarter and larger. So yeah, and especially keeping focused. I really have to repeat that because that is my vice, wanting to do too much. And so yeah, I need to focus, and I think we'll focus on NFT for the couple of next weeks.
Fantastic. Well, guys, it has been such a pleasure. Before we drop off,
Likewise.
I'm wondering if you can kind of plug your social media accounts or some of your websites, if anyone wants to kind of ask you any future questions, or if they want to check out some more of what you're doing, where can they find you all?
Josh.
Oh, I'll start. Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Joshua Jenster, I think it is. I don't have many followers yet, so go ahead, guys. Make me a happy man.
Yep, I also on Twitter, but the guys who are watching, most of them already know us, and we have a great community, a very welcoming community. All experts are hosting that community, so yeah, feel free to ask any question. Ainta and Lee and all the others will help you there. And I said it before, follow Sebastian and his project too, because if my vibe is right, he'll be big and will be big soon.
The guy's a legend.
Yep.
Yeah, and so are you guys. The fact I like is that we both have working products, and it's so Cut the Crap is just working, and that's a thing that's quite special in the space. So you can follow WordProof at wordproof.com. We have the case we did together is on the WordProof side and on the VID side. Follow me personally on Twitter. It's at DALANS. That's in the screen here. And WordProof Academy is wordproof.com/academy. And yeah, if you have questions, reach out. If you have ideas, reach out. And yeah, and I guess you can find VID next to the Dutch roadways or Dutch highways.
Yeah.
They're advertising there. But yeah, and on every content management system. So if you're watching and you're a WordPress user, go to the plugin directory, do WordProof, and in 5 minutes you set it up. There's a free plan, so there's no reason not to timestamp. You can literally change the world with your website. So
Yep. And you, Jessica, what are your plans for the coming time?
So my job really is to connect people. It was amazing you three knew each other already, but to connect people that are in the space that maybe could potentially work together at some point. I work quite closely with some European events. So in a post-COVID world, I'm hoping that we can get back to some physical networking as well.
Yes,
and
please.
you all, of course, are invited to Malta for some future events. I'm based out of sunny Malta at the moment. And more video content as well. I'm trying to make it blockchain and the potential that it has, something which people that are not involved in the industry can actually understand, absorb, and hopefully explain to other people too. And just really what you guys are doing, just breaking that down for people, because you guys are doing amazing work. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in this space, and you're really breaking down some tough challenges and barriers, but you're making headwinds. So I'm excited to catch up with you in future conversations and see more about what you're doing. But guys, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the chat today.
Very welcome. Thanks for
Thank
hosting.
you in the comments as well. Those were some great questions. So awesome job.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you so much.
thank you for hosting, Jessica. You're such you did so much research on the topic. You're very knowledgeable. It's been a pleasure to be here with all of us.
Thank you. No, really enjoy, and we'll have to do it again soon in a few weeks, and we'll catch up and see what's been going on. And thank you to GiveOnLIVE for hosting. So I think our time is just about up, but I'm sure we're going to catch up again soon. So guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
All
bye-bye.
right.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.